Today I'll be responding to the claim that recycling of hazardous waste is underestimated. The advocate's first secondary claim was the environmental benefits of recycling. His secondary claim was the economic benefits of recycling. His third secondary claim was how to recycle your industrial hazardous waste. And his fourth secondary claim was that fake recyclers cause people to rethink their recycling habits. In response to the first secondary claim, environmental benefits to recycling, the speaker states, recycling reduces the consumption of raw materials and the volume of waste materials that must be treated and disposed of. Recycling reduces emissions of greenhouse gases, and recycling decreases the release of air toxics from waste incineration. The advocate's first secondary claim needs to be stated as a stronger declarative sentence. The speaker did not provide enough information or explanation in order to quantify and support his evidence. By presenting his evidence as assertive and true, further undermines the claim. In response to the secondary claim, economic benefits to recycling, the speaker states recycling increases the production efficiency and reduces costs associated with purchasing raw materials and waste management. Companies who value strong corporate stewardship can increase goodwill with consumers and shareholders to get an edge on its competitors. Again, the applicant needs to provide a stronger declarative sentence for the secondary claim. The speaker merely informs the audience about the economic benefits without further explanation or statistical evidence. In response to the third secondary claim, how to recycle your industrial hazardous waste, the speaker states, determine how your waste is regulated, choose a responsible recycler that is really recycling your hazardous waste, and keep track of your recycling success to continuously motivate you. The advocate failed to structure his third secondary claim as a claim of fact or declarative sentence. The speaker's point is more of an inferential signpost that informs the audience how to recycle their hazardous waste. In response to the fourth secondary claim, fake recyclers cause people to rethink their recycling habits. The speaker states, according to www.dcmtechnews.com, people were caught transporting e-waste from their landfill to developing countries to make money for themselves in Pittsburgh. Most of the fake recycling happens with electronics because it is easy to resell it in other countries, and the solution can be recycling to companies EPA credited only. My question is, does it really matter whether e-waste is broken apart in the U.S. or another country? Isn't it all recycling? The advocate failed to provide more information and evidence of how exporting e-waste is detrimental. E-waste recycling is a huge problem and must be explained with more detail so people can understand the scope of the issue. According to CBS News' 60 Minutes report, following the trail of toxic e-waste, electronics of all kinds are being picked up and sent to developing countries from the U.S. These countries do not have the correct materials, facilities, or human health and environmental protection to recycle the toxic materials in e-waste. We have a situation where we have 21st century toxics being managed in a 17th century environment. These open and uncontrolled toxic environments increases pollution and create damaging health effects to the livelihood of citizens. Hazardous materials are also being leaked into the groundwater. Multiple U.S. electronic recyclers and companies are making money illegally by exporting e-waste, while these developing countries are also importing these items illegally in order to make a profit. The solution for this growing problem relies on the EPA to make tighter policies and regulations on the exportation of e-waste. People in the U.S. should recycle their e-waste through ethically certified and responsible U.S. recyclers with the proper materials, equipment, and facilities to recycle e-waste. In conclusion, I cannot refute the speaker's main claim that recycling of hazardous waste is underestimated, but the advocate failed to provide sufficient evidence and clarification of the issues. The speech was presented as persuasive and informative rather than a claim of fact, and the lack of controversy in the argument further undermined the claim. Thank you.
All right, all the structural things are okay. On the first point, basically it sounds like a critique. And then there's an argument about a lack of evidence. On the second point, again, it sounds like you're making a critique rather than a refutation. At this point, it's beginning to occur to me that maybe the inference that you're trying to make here is that there isn't a controversy on the argument, that there's not a dispute, and therefore there's not an argument there. At the end of the speech, you kind of imply that with your conclusion, but I think that that needed to be a clearer statement. You needed the declarative sentence right there that says, this in fact is not an argument because it doesn't make a declarative statement, because it simply describes something that is, as opposed to drawing an inference from it. And then I would understand why those arguments would be a little bit more relevant. On the fourth point, this is the one that's the most confusing to me, because you basically cite the evidence of the advocate. You talk about the e-waste problem. You have a good reasoning question to ask, what difference does it make as long as it's getting recycled if it gets recycled here or someplace else? And then you give a better answer than the advocate did for why it makes a difference. You've got better evidence about how overseas recycling is inadequate. They don't have the regulations. They don't have the ability to handle the material better, and there are big negative consequences there. And all of a sudden I'm not clear as to why this information is being used by you. Instead, it seems like it's, you know, if this was a debate, it would sound like you were doing an extension of their argument, not a refutation of their argument. Right at the very end, I do think you come back to the question about whether or not there is some controversy on this issue, and I think that could have been a bigger point earlier on, like I said. All right.